Welcome to our short Webinette on collaborative sales and operations planning. Let's get started. So if many of you know, Salesforce came out with a great new product called the Salesforce Manufacturing Cloud. And two of the capabilities it comes with are some new objects. One is called the sales agreement there on the left, and the other is some objects for account-based forecasting. The sales agreements are designed to track long-term agreements you might have with customers, but also eventually track actually the actuals against those agreements as well. From those agreements, account representatives could then build account-based forecasts across products from those agreements. And the idea here is if sales is armed with better information about the agreements, they can produce better account-based forecasts. So we're here to tell you about is how Rootstock works with this. It sort of makes everything that you see here on the screen come true. Because what Rootstock you'll see provides a lot of the actuals and the actual plans that go with this. So if you think about it, the sales agreements are tracking, and you sell a new agreement and you start tracking what is going on against that. The sales agreement dictates, say, you're going to do, say, 100 quantities a month or something like that. And eventually sales orders start happening. Those sales orders would come into Rootstock Cloud ERP. Rootstock would then produce from that work order, maybe pull it out of inventory, fulfill it, invoice it. And then what happens is we provide back the actuals against the agreement. So if they said they were going to buy 100, now you've got 100 against that agreement, and that goes on over time. So now what you've got is the sales agreements are tracking exactly what the customer is doing. And so at some point in time, a sales rep's then going to create a forecast, and they now can see on that agreement how that customer is tracking against it. And not only can they see the agreement, they actually can see into, because we're on the same cloud, we can see into all of Rootstock ERP, receivables, shipments, everything. So now when the sales rep goes out to talk to a customer, they know everything that's going on with that customer, a complete 360-degree view across everything in CRM and ERP, and they can have a very educated conversation with that customer. And so the idea of that is if they can have those very holistic conversations, they'll be in a better position to do better forecasting. And if you have better forecasts, that eventually turns into better plans. So what we do is we take those forecasts, including new opportunities that might be coming out and that are both tracked in Salesforce, and then we combine them. Our planning engine, and David will show you here in a minute, combines those new opportunities, what's going on in those forecasts, along with what you would typically find in ERP about what's going on from demand and supply, what our lead times are, things like that, combines it with what we already have in inventory and produces the new plans for production and supply chain planning. So it's really that simple. Better forecast equals a better plan. And so I'd like to introduce David, and he'll show you how this works. David?
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Burton. I'm a solution architect with Rootstock. And what I'd like to do this morning is walk through some of the concepts that Tom introduced to you with the slides just a moment ago. What we'll talk about and where we'll start today is you see in front of you what's called a sales agreement. So let's kind of set the stage here. We're sitting in CRM. We're managing a relationship with a customer. We've got a particular product here. And then we have a forecast that goes out on a monthly basis until the end of the year. Many times, if you think about bottom-up forecasting in a sales and operations planning world, you start at an account level, then information starts to roll up and be aggregated at higher levels across accounts by products, by regions, in different ways, and then comes into a consolidated business plan. What we want to talk about here today is how we take that consolidated plan by customer. So you see one customer here. If I come over here and click, you'll see another customer with a different forecast for the same product. What we want to talk about is how Rootstock can work with Salesforce CRM and Sales Cloud to take those individual forecasts by customer, by product, and to take that information into ERP, go through a planning cycle to be able to build the product, buy components, assemble product, whatever the case may be, to meet that forecast that we've got at the customer level. So let's jump in now and look at what we might do with these individual forecasts that we now have. what we can do is we can aggregate those, and you see right here, this is a screenshot of what would happen if we aggregated that forecast. And you see these numbers here that represent the aggregation of those numbers across both those customers for this particular product. You notice here on the bottom, we've got a problem. We don't have supply at this moment in time to be able to meet that forecast as we go forward. Our ending balance in each case is negative, so we've got to go build some product to be able to meet that demand. And that's really what we want to talk about, is how Rootstock helps you operationalize that forecast that you've generated at that individual customer level. So as we roll forward, though, let's talk about a couple of things that are important to support this planning process. First off, we've got to define this particular steam manifold that we have up here at the top of the screen. And what I wanted to show you here is this is actually where we start to look at some of the information in Rootstock and how we have that information set up. So in this particular case, we see our product up here. I can see what I have an inventory of that particular product. I can come down here and I can see other information. And what I want to do is just take a minute and just we'll look at this engineering information, because this is a manufactured product. And as a manufactured product, it's got a bill of materials that goes with it, or a whole set of components that have to be either bought or manufactured to support the assembly of that product. Rootstock takes care of all that for you. So it looks at how long it takes to buy them or get those products if they're purchased components. It looks at how long it may take to make those product or different components if they're manufactured components that go into the final product. So if we drill down and look at that, what we would see is for our steam manifold, here's the bill of materials for that particular product. So these are all the components and all the quantities that are required to go into making that particular manifold. One of the things to keep in mind here is at the top level, you see this particular coupling that says 00336. Keep that in mind, because we're going to come back and look at that in a minute. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run what's called MRP. And MRP stands for Manufacturing Resource Planning. MRP is going to look at that forecast by month that we have out there that we looked at a minute ago. It's going to go and figure how many of these different components it has in stock, how many it needs to buy, what the lead times for those components are, how long it takes to get them, how long it takes to assemble this top level product. And once it has all these components, MRP does all that planning for us. It also drives what we call capacity requirements planning. So what that gives us the ability to do is, okay, I've got all the materials I need to build this particular product, but do I have the ability to have enough people in the shop, to have enough machine capacity to be able to put these together and support that particular forecast? So as we walk through, the next step in that process is we would go ahead and we would run MRP. And you can see here where this is just where we have run MRP, and we can see that it generated a number of work orders for us. It generated a number of requisitions to go out and buy raw materials to make the products on these work orders. So you see all the things that it's done as part of its process. Once we start looking at the output of that run, we'll see here that the system will actually go through, and you see on this line here where it says planned work orders. If I go hover over this, I can see where MRP has created work orders for me to go manufacture product to meet that demand that we've identified up here in this aggregated forecast. So now you see all of the red that we had on the bottom of the screen has now disappeared. But there's more to it than that. So there's a couple of other things that are important as well. Because one of the things MRP will do is, once you make a plan with MRP, it constantly changes. Sometimes orders may be canceled by a customer. So we may need to cancel a work order that was going to build product to fulfill that order, that customer order. Sometimes orders need to be pulled in and expedited because a customer has asked us to deliver something ahead of schedule or ahead of what we had originally planned. So one of the things MRP does is it gives you information on what you need to do to fine-tune your operations. So like, for example, here's a reschedule in message. So MRP's told us that this particular order needs to be, these particular order numbers here need to be rescheduled in because whatever is being manufactured on that order is not going to be made fast enough per the original plan. And as an operation, as you go through an operation and things change, there are constantly tweaks you need to make to the plan. MRP helps you with that information. So it gives you the original plan, it gives you a supply plan to meet that demand. And then as you go forward, it tells you the tweaks that need to be made to support those changes. The other thing that's going to happen as well is we're going to go through and we're going to create those work orders. So here's an example of what a work order would look like to make this particular product. So there's a number of work orders that will be created to meet that monthly demand for that particular steam manifold. But as we look down here, the system computes all the requirement dates, when things need to be, product needs to be finished, when orders are to be released. If I come over here to where I was just a second ago, if we look at the details, that bill of materials that we saw earlier that drives the production of that product, we see where that now goes in as instruction to an operator or someone in manufacturing for the materials they need to pull to be able to make that particular product. The other thing we may need to do is buy raw materials. So you see over here, in this particular case, we need to go buy that coupling that I showed you just a minute ago when we looked at that bill of materials. So here's the recommended orders to go buy, or recommended requisitions that we can then turn into purchase orders to go buy the components we need to construct those manifolds. So MRP takes care of all that for you. If there's a change in the production plan and some of these orders need to be canceled, they need to be expedited, quantities need to be changed, MRP will alert you to those actions as well. As I mentioned a minute ago, one of the things we need to be able to do is we need to be able to go through and look at capacity. Because if I can buy, if I can buy the materials, if I commit to making that product, I need to know that I have the capacity within my operation to make it. So one of the things we might look at here, this is what we call our capacity planning workbench. You see on here, these are each one of our work centers down the left-hand side. Across the, as we go horizontally across this, think of this something similar to or akin to a Gantt chart. I can see for each day how much of a load is on each one of these work centers to make components or participate in the production of this particular product. You see across here, anything that's green means that I've got the capacity to do that work. Anything that's red means that what I've planned to do to be able to meet that forecast is not feasible within the resources that I have defined and allocated to that work center on that day. So what that means is I've got a capacity problem. Anything that's red, I've exceeded my capacity. I can drill down further into that. I can look at those work centers. So I'm looking at final assembly. You see that tab is red. That means I have a problem with capacity. So one of the things I can do is I can look down here and see exactly which orders I have that problem with. One of the things I can do here is I can come up here. I'm looking at labor capacity. I might add another person to that shift on that particular day. So that might alleviate that problem just by moving some people around within the facility. I can also take, you see this crosshair, I can take these orders and move them around as well. That's another option that I have. So I can shift this forward or backward in time. And then the other thing I can do up here is I can just have the system level load it for me. And then we'll figure out how I need to reorganize these orders to be able to meet that schedule within that capacity that I have available. Once we get those things leveled out, we figure out what we need, we move things around to make sure we're within the capacity of the facility. One of the things that we'll do is over time, as that forecast gets consumed with sales orders, now we have the ability to go back and use a tool like Einstein to do all sorts of analysis on our sales activity and what we sold, what we've delivered. So here's an example where we've just come in and we said, we're looking at a time phase plan, in this particular case by week, of what we sold in total, in aggregate, across a whole set of products. But Einstein gives you the ability to do a lot of other much more revealing analysis of that information. So if I come down here, I can look at individual products, what I've sold. If I come down here further, I can even look at by geographies, just by hovering over parts of the map here. I can see how much product I've sold in these different geographies. So we start to use mapping and spatial information and bring that into the analysis process. So what we've done now is we've really closed that loop to complete or to put together a sales and operations planning process, starting from that forecast by customer that's in CRM, all the way through the execution phase and planning phase inside of Rootstock ERP, and now to the analysis phase at the end to look at what we've actually sold, and then we can go back and compare that to the original forecast to create that closed loop planning system, which is really what we are talking about when we're talking about collaborative sales and operations planning on the Salesforce platform. If you'd like more information on this solution and other solutions that Rootstock provides, please go to rootstock.com. Thank you.